If you sit quietly for a moment and simply listen, you may notice something rather peculiar about the human mind. It is constantly searching for meaning, the way a tongue searches for a loose tooth. Always probing, always questioning, always trying to arrange the chaos of life into neat rows, as if the universe were waiting for your approval before it could make sense. Yet the astonishing thing is this: life begins to reveal its depth only when you stop insisting that it must be reasonable. Imagine that you are standing at the edge of the ocean. The waves are rolling in with no particular pattern. Some large, some small, some arriving in bursts of playful rhythm, others tumbling in clumsy unpredictability. If you tried to demand that the sea move according to your logic, you would find yourself in a rather foolish position. The sea dances according to its own nature, not according to your rules. And the moment you stop trying to make sense of its motions, you begin to appreciate them. You see beauty where you once saw disorder. You see harmony where you once saw confusion. Life is much the same. The trouble, of course, is that we humans have been taught from childhood that our safety depends on understanding everything. We were taught that uncertainty is the enemy, that confusion is a defect, and that the unknown is something to fear. Yet every interesting thing in life arises from the unknown. Love springs from mystery. Creativity emerges from silence. Discovery grows out of the space where reason has not yet drawn its borders. The mind wants solidity, but existence prefers the fluid. You see, there is a curious paradox at the heart of being human. The more desperately we try to impose sense upon life, the more life slips through our fingers like water grasped in a clenched fist. And the moment we loosen the fist and allow the water to flow, we discover that it was never ours to hold. It was ours only to feel, to experience, to move with. Consider the way we approach our emotions. We spend tremendous energy trying to sort them into tidy categories. This is good, that is bad. This should not be happening, that should be happening more. But emotions do not obey your categories. They arise like weather fronts. A cloud does not need your permission to form, nor does a breeze require your approval to blow. When you stop demanding that your inner world be logical, you begin to experience it as it truly is. Alive, shifting, full of colour and movement. The search for sense is, in many ways, the search for control. We imagine that if we can explain everything, then we can manage everything. We can secure our future. We can prevent loss. We can avoid the ever-present shadow of death. But control is perhaps the greatest illusion of all. No matter how tightly we cling to our maps, the landscape always changes beneath our feet. There is an ancient story about a man who spent his entire life trying to draw a perfect map of the world. He measured mountains, charted rivers, recorded every path and contour. But by the time he reached old age, the world had changed. Forests had grown or burned away. Rivers had shifted course. Cities had risen and fallen. His beautiful map no longer described anything at all, and he died still believing he had failed. The tragedy is not that he made an imperfect map. The tragedy is that he believed life was supposed to stay still long enough to be mapped. Life is not a diagram. It is music. And music does not ask for your understanding. It asks only for your presence. When you listen to a melody, you do not pause every few seconds to determine whether the next note makes sense. You surrender to the unfolding. You let the music carry you. And when it ends, you do not demand that it justify itself. Its meaning was in the experience of listening. Why then do we demand that life explain itself, when life is nothing but a grand symphony of events arising and fading? Perhaps it is because we are frightened of the void behind our thoughts, frightened of the silence beneath our words, frightened of the possibility that we are not in charge. Yet the moment you stop struggling against this fear, something extraordinary happens. Fear becomes spacious. It opens. It softens. And in that openness, you begin to sense the deeper rhythm moving through everything. Meaning is not something you find by chasing it. Meaning finds you when you relax your grip on the world. And it finds you in the most unexpected places. In the way sunlight dances on a wall. In the gentle absurdity of a stranger's smile. In the quiet moment when you realize that the thing you feared has already come and gone, leaving you oddly untouched. Meaning does not arrive as an explanation. It arrives as a feeling, a recognition, a soft, wordless yes beneath the chatter of the mind. When you abandon the demand for sense, you make room for something far richer than sense. You make room for wonder. Logic is a closed fist, but wonder is an open hand. And only an open hand can receive. The universe reveals itself to those who stop interrogating it long enough to listen. Let us look at the self for a moment. That little character you call I, who is always trying to manage the show. Have you ever noticed that the self is exhausted? It spends its entire life trying to maintain an image, trying to predict outcomes, trying to protect itself from every possible threat. And yet, strangely, it never succeeds. No matter how skillfully it plans, life refuses to follow its instructions. But this is not a mistake. It is mercy. For if life obeyed the ego, it would shrink into something small, brittle, and terribly dull. The ego wants certainty, but certainty kills the adventure. It kills the dance. It kills the possibility of discovery. The ego says, I must understand to be safe. Life whispers, you are safe enough to not understand. The moment you stop demanding that life explain itself is the moment you begin to live without the armor of the self. And when that armor loosens even slightly, you discover something astonishing. The world becomes lighter. everything flows with greater ease. You find yourself laughing at things that once terrified you. Not because the world has changed, but because you have stopped insisting that it be otherwise. You see, the search for sense is a form of resistance, and resistance is tension. Tension is suffering. When you resist the way things are, you create a battle where none exists. But when you let go, the battle dissolves. You realize that life was never your opponent. Life was always inviting you into its rhythm. Think of a leaf floating down a river. If the leaf demanded to know the meaning of every swirl and eddy, it would have a miserable journey. But the leaf does not ask. It simply floats. It trusts the current without knowing where the river leads. And in that trust, there is peace. We often imagine that if we stop searching for sense, we will fall into chaos. But the opposite is true. When you loosen your grip, you fall into harmony. Life has its own intelligence, far older and wiser than the human mind. You are not separate from that intelligence. You are an expression of it. You are a wave of the cosmic tide. And the wave does not need to understand the ocean in order to move beautifully. Look at your relationships. How often do we destroy intimacy by demanding clarity where clarity does not exist? We say, "Explain yourself. Tell me exactly what this means. Guarantee that you will never leave or change or disappoint." Yet love, like life, cannot be pinned down. The more you try to force it into sense, the more lifeless it becomes. But when you allow love to be mysterious, it grows vibrant, tender, real. A living thing rather than a contract. The same is true of death. We fear death because we insist that it must make sense. But death is the ultimate surrender. The moment when every effort to understand dissolves and you fall into the great unknown. What if death is not the failure of meaning, but the completion of it? What if the very thing you fear is the doorway into the vastness that has been holding you all along? When you stop reasoning your way through existence, you begin to feel your way through it. And feeling is not inferior to reason. Feeling is the original language of life. Before we learned to speak, before we learned to think, we knew how to feel. And in that feeling, we were intimate with the world. We were part of the dance. We had not yet convinced ourselves that we were separate, isolated, observers trying to decode the choreography. To live without demanding sense is not to live in ignorance. It is to live in intimacy. It is to finally recognize that you are woven into the fabric of everything else. The trees breathe the air you exhale. The stars burn the atoms that make your blood. The universe is not happening around you. It is happening through you. And so, life begins to make a very different kind of sense. A sense that is not logical, but musical. Not rigid, but fluid. Not forced, but felt. The sense of belonging. The sense of presence. The sense that you are exactly where you need to be, even when you cannot explain why. When you abandon the need for sense, you discover the freedom to simply be. And in that being, life opens its palms and reveals a beauty that was always there, waiting patiently for you to stop searching.